Chapter 7 Symphony of Sorcery. Water was flowing down a flight of stairs, enough to soak into Riku's shoes. It was like standing in a river. This looked pretty much the same as the first floor of Master Yensid's tower, except for all the water. It was apparently coming from upstairs. Riku began climbing the steps. The stairs and the rooms along the way were almost identical to those of the mysterious tower. When Riku opened the door on the top floor where Yensid usually was, he found Mickey sitting at a desk in the middle of the flooded chamber. Mickey! Riku ran over to his friend, but Mickey's eyes remained closed, and his expression intense as he waved his arms like a conductor. There was an ominous aura in the air, especially around the music stand to Mickey's rear. It's this musical score. It has him trapped. Riku approached the stand and summoned his Keyblade, but then he heard a voice. You won't be able to defeat that darkness with brute force. I'm Mickey, the sorcerer's apprentice. Who are you? It belonged to Mickey. Riku didn't know where the voice was coming from, but he could definitely hear it somewhere in the room. Should he respond to the mouse with his eyes shut and hands waving, or should he direct his answer somewhere else? Riku. Unsure of what to do, Riku decided to just speak into the air, then asked a question of his own. If brute force won't work, tell me what will. Do you really mean you're gonna try and help me? Yes. Of course, not helping Mickey wasn't an option in Riku's book. Gosh, Riku, something tells me you and I are gonna be good friends, and we'll help each other out a lot someday. Riku couldn't help a little smile. Inside this music is a sound idea powerful enough to dispel the darkness. Can you find it? As Mickey spoke, another musical score appeared in the air and descended to the flooded floor. I'll try. Leave it to me. Riku accepted the task gladly, then walked over to the second music stand and raised his Keyblade. Light and sound welled from the score, pulling Riku inside. He landed deep in a forest bathed in moonlight. Behind him, Komoribat and Meow followed along, and in front of him, a group of Dream Eaters appeared. Here we go! Riku called out to his spirits, then leaped into the battle. He swung his Keyblade the way he always did. But... Hey, what's going on? Normally, whenever Riku's blows landed, he would hear and feel the impact. But this time, each strike created a beautiful tone, almost like he was playing an instrument. Let's try that again. When he performed a series of attacks, the notes became a melody playing over the sounds of the world around him, joining together to create their own sort of symphony. Just then, some white flowers opened nearby. Their big petals were arranged like steps, allowing access to a place he couldn't reach before. Well, I guess that works. Riku muttered, then climbed the floral staircase and made his way deeper into the woods, where the trees reminded him of fall. Like before, Riku struck the Dream Eaters with a nice tempo. Komoribat and Meow's attacks produced melodies too. As soon as the symphony came together, some withered brown leaves rose up to create yet another set of platforms, leading Riku farther into the forest, where snow had started piling up. The snow crunched under his feet with each step. When Riku played his melody of attacks here, platforms shaped like snowflakes formed over a frozen pond, and at the top of the hill on the far side was a gleaming musical score. This must be the sound idea. When Riku lifted his Keyblade, the score turned into light and flew into his chest. But immediately afterward, he felt the ground suddenly dropping away beneath him. What? And Riku tumbled headfirst into the darkness. Riku awoke on one of the several bleak mountaintops, nothing like the forest from before. He was on a crag near the summit, where red lava burst from the crater with a wave of intense heat. The young man with silver hair was standing right beside the lip of the volcano. You waiting for me? Riku asked, looking up from the stone. Yes, the boy chosen by the Keyblade, Riku. What? Whatever he'd been expecting to hear, it wasn't that. He'd always believed Sora was the Keyblade's hero, not him, but this guy was saying that Riku was the chosen one. It was yours first, wasn't it? But you succumbed to the darkness you could not control, and your prize, the Keyblade, passed on to Sora instead. Your mistakes always end up being other people's problems. To Riku, the accusation was a painful truth. Still, he lifted his head with a smile on his lips. Maybe so, but I'm here to change all that. Once again, you performed predictably. although on a grander scale than I imagined. If you're feeling so chatty, let's skip to where you reveal what this is all about." Nothing anyone could say would make him falter, not anymore. He just smiled back at the young man, indomitable. Behind the youth, lava erupted from the crater, casting its red light over the both of them. "I don't know how you did it, but you really have found a way to trap darkness inside your heart, and a boy who's immune to darkness is of no use to us." Well, there's some good news. Riku wasn't sure anyone could ever be truly immune to the darkness, but maybe he'd found the next best thing, belief and clarity of purpose. He would never fall prey to the darkness again. "Your abyss awaits." As if on cue, lava shot from the volcano all at once, filling the area with black smoke. What climbed from the crater was Chernobog, a horned fiend with large black wings like those of a bat. The monster rose into the air along with the lava spewing from the mountain. "Help me out?" At his call, Komori-Bat circled Riku's head once and emerged with him in a flash of light. Batwings sprouted from his back, and now he could chase the fiend down. Riku leaped away from the ground to confront Chernobog in midair. The fiend flapped its wings, unleashing balls of fire toward him. Riku deflected the attack with his keyblade, then immediately closed the distance between them and dealt Chernobog an upward blow from chest to chin. Grah! The great creature clutched its head and hid its body behind its wings. "Now, Blizzaga!" The moment Chernobog opened its wings again, Riku seized the opening to cast a spell. The demon spit out a fireball at nearly the same instant, but Riku's icy magic obliterated Chernobog's flames and scored a direct hit on the creature. "I think I did it." Chernobog went limp and slumped over the mouth of the volcano, and darkness swallowed the realm again. The next thing he knew, Riku was back in front of the music stand in the room with Mickey. "Thank you, Riku. Say, can we try out Sound Idea?" At Mickey's suggestion, Riku began to wave his keyblade like a conductor with a baton. When he did, light emanated from his keyblade, creating a mysterious and wonderful sound. Yet it seemed incomplete somehow. It transformed into light and flew to the musical score behind Mickey. But the dark presence around it wasn't dispelled yet. And no sooner had Riku realized it than a new sheet of music arrived. A harmony started to flow from the new sound idea, filling the chamber. The swell of music and light poured into the score, and the darkness was no more. The light grew and grew until it swallowed the whole room in brilliant white. "That was amazing! What happened?" The flood receded, and Mickey rose from his chair, now awake and looking around in confusion. "Sora." Riku told him the name of his friend who had found the other sound idea. Sora was a world away, and yet right by his side. "Sora? Funny, just hearing that name kinda makes me want to smile," Mickey said warmly. Riku responded with a smile of his own. "Yeah, that's how he is. Just hearing his name is enough to make you smile. Yeah, that's Sora all right." "What do you know? Riku and Sora. The sound ideas you two set free joined together. And when they did, they made a great and powerful harmony." Their two melodies had combined to make a song, which in turn became power. And when people joined forces, they were stronger for it. "Sora can find the brightest part of anything and pull off miracles like there's nothing to it. It's pretty hard not to smile around him." "I can't bring happiness to other people the way Sora can, but I hope I can at least help him in some way," Riku thought. "Wow, no wonder the music sounded like so much fun. But I bet he's got you to thank for that. Having such a good friend means he could really enjoy it." "Huh?" Riku was startled to hear that. "It's like each of you is holding on to a little part of the other. Your hearts are always in tune, so they're free to sing. Gosh, I hope I can be part of a team someday." "Someday? Mickey, you've already helped us both more times than we can count. Maybe you haven't yet in this world, but I know you'll get your wish." "You will. Trust me." Riku hugged Mickey's shoulders. Then Mickey hopped into the air as if he had just remembered something. "Oh no, I've got to hurry or I'll be in trouble," he cried. He dashed from the room, giving Riku one last smile before he left. Once he was alone, a keyhole floated up before Riku. This was the final keyhole. Maybe. He couldn't stop thinking about the abyss supposedly awaiting him. What did that mean? Their worlds appeared parallel, but they weren't at all. What was Sora doing? Whatever the answer was, he would find it beyond this door. Mickey and Lee's side. Quite some time had passed since Sora and Riku's departure. Mickey was inspecting a bookshelf in Yen Sid's chamber. Maybe there was a book that would prove useful in the journey and battle to come. He wanted to gain even the tiniest bit more knowledge of the world while he had the chance. Sora and Riku were busy with their Mark of Mastery exam, and Mickey was positive they would pass it and become true masters. That was why he had to be sure his mind was sharp for the upcoming conflict. Behind him, Donald was gazing at the sky through a star-shaped window. "Gee, I hope Sora's okay," he said, worried. "He'll be fine as long as Riku's with him," replied Goofy, but Donald didn't seem convinced. He and Goofy had traveled alongside Sora a long time. Maybe they knew to be worried about something Mickey wasn't aware of. Donald had his head to one side. Mickey recalled something from his previous trials. This Mark of Mastery exam was an exam in name only, since it was actually an important battle to awaken people who were sleeping in the darkness of sorrow. They had to free the sleeping worlds that had not been completely restored and rouse the 3 Keyblade wielders, Terra, Aqua, and Ven. Mickey had once fought alongside them. The trio's power would be essential in putting a stop to the designs of Master Xehanort, who was at the root of all the conflict that had come before. When he thought of it that way, it was easy to see why Donald was so nervous. Master Xehanort had set traps within traps for them in the past. Ansem the Wise was the false Ansem, as well as Organization 13, Xemnas, Xehanort, and then there was Master Xehanort himself. His convoluted mess of connections and schemes had caused them more grief than a few times. What if? Mickey turned to face Yen Sid and started to voice his suspicions. "You don't think?" What if they had already fallen into the evil master's snare? Why are the sleeping worlds asleep at all? Why weren't they freed back then? Could it be because... Master Yen Sid! Just as Mickey cried out, a lone bird flew in through the moon-shaped window. "Look, it's a raven!" Goofy seemed confused why it was here. Mickey instinctively swallowed. He knew that raven. "Uh-oh!" "That raven is Maleficent's," Yen Sid murmured. Something similar had happened once before. Mickey remembered the report from the 3 good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Right before their second run-in with Organization 13, a raven from Maleficent had arrived at the tower after a newly awakened Sora had come to prepare for his fight. "What's it got?" Donald squawked. The raven dropped Minnie's tiara and a letter on Yen Sid's desk before flying away. His heart racing, Mickey picked up the letter. "Well?" "Gosh, what's it say?" Donald and Goofy approached with trepidation. The letter was from Maleficent, and what it said left Mickey filled with despair. Once he had finished looking it over, his face grim, he said, "It's from Maleficent. She kidnapped Minnie." "She took Queen Minnie!" Donald and Goofy exclaimed in unison. Maleficent had chosen the middle of the Mark of Mastery exam to make her move. Was it coincidence, or was she in cahoots with Master Xehanort? "The letter says for me to return to Disney Castle, or else," Mickey told them. Yen Sid closed his large eyes and replied straight away, "Mickey, there is no time to waste." It was possible that he had foreseen this very development. "Okay," Mickey replied, then looked at the worried Donald and Goofy. "You fellas, stay here." "King Mickey, we're going with ya." As soon as he told them to stay behind, the duo cut him off with a pair of salutes. They were concerned for Minnie, too. Of course they were. Mickey's stern expression softened a bit. "Gosh, I guess you're right, pals," he said. "We friends need to stick together." Donald and Goofy shared a look and smiled. "Master Yen Sid, we'll be back," Mickey called to the sorcerer before running from the room. Donald and Goofy weren't far behind. Once they had gone, Yen Sid let out a long sigh. "The timing is too perfect, too calculated. Maleficent must sense a change in the forces of darkness," he said softly. His misgivings were exactly the same as Mickey's, as was the first culprit to come to mind. "A change, like Xehanort." The sorcerer crossed his arms and closed his eyes as he pondered what lay in store for the heroes. Axel strode swiftly through the corridors of darkness. Now that he was human, traveling this way didn't feel too great. There was no telling when the darkness might devour him. Even nobodies feared the darkness slowly taking them over, but he'd never thought his black coat would come in handy. Now he would have at least a little protection. Yes, Axel was now truly flesh and blood, which meant that the idea of losing himself to the darkness frightened him. He broke into a smile. What a human thing to feel. Still, he needed the power of darkness to open these corridors. Without it, he wouldn't be able to travel from Radiant Garden to other worlds. The darkness in his heart gave him that power, and he had at least enough for this. Was any human truly free of darkness in their heart? Wasn't that the nature of sadness and regret? At the same time, he also harbored doubts about the claim that nobodies didn't have hearts. That's what he had been told many times, and he used to believe that was just the way it was. But was a heart something that could truly be lost? He had felt sadness and loneliness, he knew, but didn't you need a heart for that? Or was it just the imitation of one provided by his memories? There was a fleeting ache deep in Axel's chest. Hadn't he felt the same pain as a nobody too? You made us a promise. Axel suddenly got the sense he'd heard Roxas's voice, and he stopped. That you'd always be there, to bring us back. That's right, he had promised. That he'd always be there to bring them back. Axel then realized something. Us? Didn't I just promise to bring Roxas back? Was there someone else? Not Isa. No, that can't be it. It's not Isa. But who else would I have made that promise to? My memories are a mess. Wait, have they been altered? Maybe even erased? But what would anyone have to gain by that? Was I trying to bring back someone whose name I can't remember? Someone besides Roxas? Sheesh, so much for getting it memorized, he muttered, scratching his head furiously. He did make the promise, that much was certain. He had no doubt that he had sworn to bring Roxas back, and when he finally did, he would learn the identity of the one he couldn't remember. And even if I don't, I hope it'll give me a place to start. I'm sure it will. That's why I left Radiant Garden. I can't do anything on my own. I need help, and I know just who to ask. I'll help them however I can, too, both for their sakes and for Roxas. Axel resumed walking through the corridor of darkness. Back at Disney Castle, Mickey burst into the royal hall to confront Pete Maleficent. Pete had Minnie in his grasp. "Pete, you big thug!" Donald shouted. "Thug works for me. Well, got a role to play, right?" Pete responded with a grin. "Gosh, at least he's honest, in a dishonest way," Goofy commented. With Minnie captive, Pete had the advantage, and he knew it. "Silence! No underling of mine shall be insulted so. I have great plans for dear Pete and for all the worlds, once I have taken them for my own," Maleficent proclaimed. "Then I've got bad news for you. That day's never gonna come," Mickey told the evil fairy. "Perhaps you should take a few moments to reconsider. Or does the Queen's life mean nothing to you at all?" Maleficent's reply made their position clear. They could do nothing as long as Minnie was a hostage. As Mickey and his comrades racked their brains over what to do, Minnie shouted, "Mickey, don't you listen to her! You can't let Maleficent have her!" But Pete covered her mouth before she could finish. "No, Minnie!" Mickey took a step forward as he cried the name of his beloved queen. He glared at Maleficent, clenching his fists for a moment to calm the fury in his heart. "All right, Maleficent, tell us what you want." She smirked and stroked her chin. "Let me see, shall I begin with this world? I much preferred it in its darker, more ominous permutation." "You said it! This place needs some lights out time," Pete added, but Mickey didn't believe for a moment that was enough reason for her to come all this way. "You're lying, Maleficent. Not even you would go through this much trouble just for that. What is it you're really after?" he pressed. The fairy regarded him coldly. "Very perceptive. I presume you are familiar with Xehanort, the man who led me to discover worlds outside my own." At that name, Mickey and everyone else with him gasped. "You know him?" Mickey asked, his voice tight. "As do you, I see." Maleficent chuckled before continuing. "Yes, he shared everything with me. How to go about winning a heart over to the darkness, and most gloriously about the 7 hearts of pure light, the ones that would grant me the power I need to conquer all worlds." Maleficent had once led several other villains in a quest to take over every world. So Xehanort even had a hand in Sora's first battle against her. However, the worlds were much too complex, too much for even me to contain. It seemed I had miscalculated. Then it came to me. Of course, I could go about conquering other worlds in my own manner. You do have the data for all the worlds, do you not? And now you will hand it over to me." "What do you mean?" Mickey asked back. "Data for all the worlds? Was she talking about the datascape?" "Don't you bozos pretend you don't remember. Me and Maleficent was trapped inside it. Now cough it up," Pete hollered. Not so long ago, Mickey and his friends had watched over Datasaur's adventures in the datascape and even joined him. As for the datascape itself, it was made from Jiminy's journals, the records of their travels up to this point. But what would that have to do with Maleficent's intentions? "Why do you want the data?" Mickey demanded. "I'm afraid that is no concern of yours," she told him icily. Mickey was ready to fight her if he had to, and he took a step forward, fixing her with a hard look. Wouldn't want her royal Minnie Mousiness to get a boo-boo, now would we?" But Pete's warning brought him to a halt. "I see you have failed to recognize the futility of your situation. Very well, face your doom." With that, Maleficent unleashed her magic, but when the spell was about to hit Mickey and his friends, something deflected it. What? How? Mickey noticed a pair of round, disc-shaped weapons, chakrams, at the edge of his vision. That couldn't be. But there was no time to check who threw them. He couldn't let this moment go to waste. "What?" As Pete staggered back, Minnie seized the opening to cast a spell of her own. "Light!" It was enough to free her from his clutches, and she ran for it. "Oh, Mickey!" The king rushed over to her, and they took each other's hands. "Minnie!" Then quickly putting Minnie safely behind him, Mickey brandished his keyblade. "Maleficent, you lose!" Victory was certain at this point. Mickey glared at the witch and her cohort. "Say, m'lady, I think the pipsqueak's right. We better hit the road," Pete said, so meekly that it was hard to believe he had been so arrogant before. "I now know what I seek lies within these walls. Trust that I will eliminate you in good time." Still confident, Maleficent opened a corridor of darkness beside her and stepped into it with a swirl of her cape. "Hey, wait for me, Maleficent!" Panicking, Pete hurried after her, and the two of them disappeared. Meanwhile, another dark portal had opened in the room. Mickey looked over at it and called out, "You used the darkness to get here? That was reckless." A man in a black coat slowly emerged and yanked the spikes of his chakrams free from the floor. Though Mickey had lowered his keyblade, Donald and Goofy still had their respective weapons at the ready. "But gosh, I didn't expect you to save us, Axel." The man he had called Axel smirked and replied with a smile. "Axel didn't. My name is Lee." Lee put a finger to his temple. "Got it memorized?" "No way, you're human again?" Mickey exclaimed in surprise. "Looks that way," Lee said and smiled with a shrug. "But what happened?" Mickey asked. Lee looked intently at him. "Well, like you said, I'm human again. That probably gives you the general idea, right?" Mickey gulped. "Anyway, I don't think I could have timed that much better. I was just coming here to ask you where you guys were, and look what I find." Lee popped his neck, then bent down closer to Mickey's face. "Thanks, but why did you want to know where we were?" "King Mickey, don't tell me you trust a member of the organization!" Donald shouted, his staff raised. Mickey remembered that Axel had once betrayed the organization and worked alongside Ansem, Riku in Xehanort's form. But Lee apparently wasn't going to tell that to Donald and Goofy. Hey, is that any way to talk to the guy who saved your life?" Lee chided, and Donald fell silent. Donald didn't know that Axel had saved Sora at one point even further in the past, too. "You helped me once before, right?" said Goofy, putting away his shield at last. After he'd been knocked unconscious in Hollow Bastion, Axel was the one who had roused him. "Did I? Don't recall. Anyway, I need a favor," Lee said with a solemn look. "What is it?" the king asked, looking up, and Lee held his gaze. Slowly, he began to explain. "He saved us." While Mickey gave Yensid a brief report in front of the sorcerer's usual seat, Lee stood quietly off to the side, looking at the ground. The whole flight back to the mysterious tower in the realm between, Donald hadn't taken his eyes off Lee. "What is this favor, you ask?" Yensid inquired. Lee looked at the sorcerer dead in the eye and told him, "Teach me how to wield a keyblade." What? Mickey, Donald, and Goofy all shouted at once, and Donald continued with a loud, "Absolutely not!" Unlike the flustered trio, Yen Sid just let out a long breath and replied, "I sensed something was amiss nearly the moment Sora and Riku departed. Xehanort must have known what we were attempting even before we began." Donald and Goofy shared a worried glance. "But you do know where they are?" Goofy lowered his head as if he found the question hard to voice. Yen Sid gazed for a moment at the fist on his knee, then stroked his long beard and started to speak. "You must understand, this examination is in no way how the mark of mastery is usually found. However, in light of what they must do next, it was a necessity. If Sora and Riku complete their test by finding the 7 doors corresponding to the 7 pure lights, they will return home with a new power. At that point, they will both be true masters. However, the dangers make this more trial than test." Yen Sid's voice was grave as he explained Sora and Riku's exam. Lee crossed his arms, his right foot tapping impatiently, and Yen Sid fell silent. "But are they safe now?" Mickey pressed. "Considering their ability, I would like to believe that they are. However, all my attempts to locate Sora and Riku end questionably. Xehanort is a devious tactician. There is nothing we can do that he will not, to some extent, be able to predict." Donald sighed, unable to hide his concern. "As you can see, the organization members are complete people again. Xehanort will be no different. We cannot afford another moment's hesitation. We must consider any strategy to outwit Xehanort and catch him off guard." The sorcerer examined Lee for a silent moment, then said, "I must warn you again, the road will not be easy." "Fine, let's jump right in," Lee replied firmly, arms still crossed. Yen Sid beckoned him into the inner chamber, and inside, Lee was met by 3 brightly smiling old fairies. "Welcome!" What? Lee was confused. No one had ever seemed so happy to see him, at least not since he became a nobody. "Let's see, and you are?" "Lee." The fairies were each wearing robes and hats of a different color, blue, red, and green. "I'm Merryweather." "I'm Flora." "And I'm Fauna." The trio introduced themselves together. The fairy in blue was Merryweather, the one in red was Flora, and the one in green was Fauna. "Oh my, what a dreary black coat." "But we weren't asked to give him a new outfit. Such a shame." The fairies chattered away as they fluttered around him. "Now then, dearie, we're going to take you somewhere special." "Somewhere special?" Lee asked. "Yes, it's a very special place," Merryweather replied. "Well then, let's be off." The 3 fairies all waved their wands toward him. Startled, Lee noticed the twinkles of light surrounding him, and a moment later, he vanished. After Lee was gone, the mood in Yen Sid's chamber turned somber. If Master Xehanort had laid a trap in Sora and Riku's Mark of Mastery exam, then the 2 boys were in danger. Not only that, but the sorcerer was indeed considering any strategy to outwit him, and the one they had just chosen was another source of worry. "Master Yen Sid, gosh, do you think you'll be able to do it?" Mickey asked, unable to take the oppressive atmosphere any longer. "It's clear you cannot teach a cat to bark, but Merlin and the 3 good fairies are aiding him in a place that's more temporally flexible. My hope is that he can at least learn to wield it. He certainly has fire, so I suppose now it depends on how strongly it burns." How strongly his fire burns. If Axel's behavior was anything to go by, Lee's determination was strong. Mickey had seen it himself. But what about his physical abilities? Regardless of how strong Lee was, Mickey could imagine how strenuous the training must be. All he could do for now, though, was have faith in him. "Oh, but what about Sora and Riku?" Mickey asked next. Yen Sid let out a deep breath. "Well, if we are running on the assumption Xehanort knew what we were planning, then he still would need to have been there, back in the very place and time when the Destiny Islands were lost to darkness. Otherwise, Sora and Riku would have been beyond his reach." "Gee, do you really think it's possible Xehanort could have planned things that far in advance?" "No, as a matter of fact, I do not." Mickey patted his chest in relief at those words. The exam had begun in the place Sora and Riku had once left behind so long ago, the Destiny Islands.
One dream is connected to another, which is why we must choose in which sleeping world you will begin. I will return you to the Destiny Islands just before they were swallowed by the darkness and plunged into sleep.
It had also been a world of memory. Because of that, Xehanort couldn't possibly have interfered in the exam unless he was there himself. Not even a man like him had that much power.
But what if he did the same thing as Sora and Riku did and he jumped through time?
Goofy cocked his head to one side questioningly.
For that to work, a version of himself would have had to exist at both source and destination. Not even Xehanort can transport his whole body across vast reaches of time.
Aside from a few exceptions, Mickey had never heard of anyone traveling through time. Something bothered him, though. Mickey recalled something Jiminy had written in his journal about their first adventure. When did Ansem, Xehanort's Heartless, take control of Riku? He had manipulated the boy by worming his way into the darkness within Riku's heart, which must have happened in the midst of battle. Or had it? No, Riku was already in the darkness's thrall at the onset of their journey. Why had it been necessary for Xehanort to take control of Riku as a Heartless and not as Xehanort himself? Oh! Mickey exclaimed as he realized something. Oh no! After thinking for a moment, he looked at Yen Sid. I remember, Xehanort did give up his body. It was a version of him that was possessing Riku. It had been necessary for Xehanort to discard his own body to seize control of Riku's heart. Did that mean he had planned everything from the very beginning? Yen Sid's eyes went wide.
No, it cannot be. Could he be that cunning, possess that kind of foresight?
Donald and Goofy looked at each other nervously. His expression grim, Mickey looked up at the sorcerer. If it's all right with you, can I go help Sora and Riku out? He wanted to go more than anything. I'm the only one who can save the two of them now.
How? You cannot enter the world of a dream. Where will you go?
Yen Sid admonished him. Mickey replied with confidence. If Xehanort really is behind all this, then they won't stay in the dream worlds forever. Eventually, they're gonna reappear somewhere that we can go reach them. And we can even probably guess the place. Follow the hearts and you'll find the way. That's something Master Aqua once told me. We'll never be apart no matter where we are, because we're connected. Mickey recalled what Aqua had said. Everything's going to be fine. Nothing can tear us apart. Aqua, never forget, we'll always be friends. Mickey's promise to Aqua had bound their hearts together, and Sora and Riku were connected to him in the same way. Yen Sid nodded deeply at Mickey's reply. Now that he was ready to go, Donald and Goofy approached the king anxiously. King Mickey! But before they could say any more, Mickey shook his head. Aw, fellas, you're my best pals, but this time I really do need to go it alone. He smiled at them. The dangers are greater than anything we've ever faced before. If something were to happen to Sora and Riku and me, why, you'll be the only ones left to keep this world safe. Donald and Goofy deflated at Mickey's words.
Mickey, I was not able to locate Sora, but I sense Riku's presence in the realm between. Trust your heart, and I know you will find him.
Yen Sid told Mickey. Thank you. I promise I'll bring them both back safe and sound, Mickey assured him, his hand clenched in a determined fist. Lee had thought he was ready for this, but he hadn't imagined it would be this hard. He gazed directly ahead as he took a few deep breaths. Fighting Roxas was nothing compared to this. That battle had been tougher than anything else he'd ever faced, but not because of his opponent's skill. No, it was the animosity in his best friend's eyes. And back then, he hadn't known what would befall them when he did bring Roxas back to the organization. Things were different now, though. Lee knew exactly what to do. There was no telling how it would all shake out, but at least his course was set. He would bring Roxas back, and then he would return the other one his friend had mentioned back to normal. He didn't know if back to normal was the right way of putting it. Maybe he was trying to restore things that were beyond fixing. But I can't just call it quits when I don't have the whole story. I won't give up. Not when I promised you. I'm coming. Wait for me. I made that promise on the clock tower, watching the sunset, and I won't stop until I've kept it. I've got it memorized. I won't forget. I'll always be there to bring you back. Lee muttered with a grin as he panted. It was a wish. An oath.
A promise. I'll bring you back as many times as it takes. I'll always be there, for my sake and for both of yours. It's because you two are my best friends. Who taught me that? Best friends? We were in Twilight Town on the clock tower, the same place as always. We had all been eating some cold, salty ice cream. Me and Roxas and who else? I can't remember, but that doesn't matter. All I know is that you both are coming back. Not just Roxas, but the other person too. That's why I'm going to get a Keyblade. Sure, it's going to be rough going, and I know I'm doing something crazy. But it'll take more than this to bring me down. I'm strong, after all.